I am Ludvig Isaksson of SMHI, and I'm part of the Copernicus Regional Reanalysis for Europe. And today I will talk about the data access part for this data sets. This is the outline of my presentation today, the main sections. First, a short introduction. Then I will mention, Semyon did that as well, the user learning services, or ULS. And I will dive into the climate data store, the CDS, and that's the main part of this presentation, and the different ways of accessing data in the climate data store. And finally, I'll say a few words about the upcoming test release of the Arctic reanalysis in the climate data store. So first off, since there are no CARA or SARA data currently publicly available in the CDS, in this presentation, I will look at the UERA data sets, which are available. So that's a thing to know here. But yeah, the plan is to pre-release these test data for a shorter period of time for both CARA and SARA. And I'll come back to that in the end. And the data access from the CDS for CARA and SARA will be very similar to the current UERA data. So this presentation will probably hold up pretty well for that data as well. Yeah, the user learning services, I'll also recommend, because a lot of these things that I'm going to mention are covered in these lessons, the UERA lessons in the user learning services. So log in there and search for UERA and you'll see these 3 lessons. There's a lot about data processing and retrieval there. Just a tip. And then the climate data store, the cornerstone of the C3S infrastructure. It is hosting a lot of data, for example, all the UERA data. And the main options for data access in the CDS is to download the data directly through a form in your web browser. Or you can install a Python package called CDS API and write scripts and automate the downloading process. And you can also use the CDS toolbox to write and execute scripts for extraction and plotting and processing. I'll show a slide of that in the end. So this is the URL to the home page of the CDS. And it looks something like this. There is a search box on the start page. If you would enter UERA there, for example, and click search, you'll get to a list of the data sets in the UERA. This is the starting point for downloading data. There are different levels of data. It is divided into different parts. So worth mentioning here is that this is the analysis data from the UERA project that is available here from these data sets. And they have access both through the web form and through the CDS toolbox. So you can access those in all the ways. But there is also the complete UERA dataset, which contains all the data, also the model level data and the forecast data. And this can only be accessed by the CDS API. So that's good to know. And if you click, for example, on the single levels dataset here, you will get to a page with 3 tabs: the overview, the download data, and the documentation. And please read the user guide under documentation, and there are listed issues, known issues with the datasets, and a lot of other things, and the overview as well. Read those before starting. But today we're going to focus on the download data tab, because that's the access tab. Here you can choose which model system you want to download data from and which variable. And then you fill in all the years and the months and time steps you are interested in. And the format of the data. Here it's worth noting that the NetCDF format is still experimental. The grid is more tested out. So when you're done with this, you can click the Submit Form button down here to retrieve the chosen data in a grid file. So that's an easy way to get started knowing these data sets and downloading. If you're only interested in small amounts, this could cover your needs. But if you want to do processing, for example, and then the toolbox can be an alternative. And if you click the Show Toolbox Request button, you'll get some help to get started using the toolbox to download the same data that's chosen here. And similar with the API request button, this will generate some code for the CDS API that can get you started to download the selected data automatically instead. And let's jump further into the CDS API, the application program interface. As mentioned, it's good for downloading larger amounts of data. There is some installation needed, but it's all well described and not too difficult, I guess. And you can then write Python scripts, for example, to retrieve the data you need automatically. And Samuel mentioned this as well, the ULS GitHub, where we have some code examples for downloading UERA data. The toolbox editor. You remember the button where you can generate code for the CDS toolbox. That's this part. You can paste it into the toolbox editor to download data that you need. So this is a tool that can both download, process, and plot the data you're interested in. So this is very interesting in many ways also. Here you can retrieve data, and then you have to write some code, well described also in the toolbox, to plot, for example, the data you downloaded. So unless you want, if you don't want to handle a lot of grid files, this can be an option. Yeah, and finally, a few words about the Arctic reanalysis and the upcoming test release of the 2018 C3S Arctic reanalysis data. This is due November 2020, and it will be similar in the CDS to what I showed previously here. The difference is that the CARA is divided in two regions, the East and the West, and this will be reflected in the dataset names. Otherwise, it's also planned to be divided into levels similar to what we saw before. And finally, the variables that are planned to be included in the first data release, this test release in the CDS. There might be added some other variables later, but they're not yet named by the WMO, so they will be published later. But here you can see them, the variables that will be in the first release, and the full the SARA data will also. There are plans for a test release, as mentioned, and the full data set for SARA is planned to be released in summer 2021. So that's my presentation. Thank you.